So Talat, I'll go to the next rule, which is probably my favorite part of the rules that you've enlisted for us. And that is the often mispronounced letters in the Holy Qur'an, because this is something which is so common. Everyone learns, in different ways. Everyone has their own language around the world. But with Arabic, it's very specific of how you're supposed to learn it, especially the Arabic of the Holy Qur'an. So I believe you're going to go through a few of the letters that are mispronounced.
So the first letter that I want to discuss is the Tha. And this letter is often mispronounced with the Sin. And one word that we can use as an example is batha. And often if this word comes, some people may pronounce it wrong and say bassa as the Sin. So the correct pronunciation to pronounce this letter Tha is that the tip of your tongue should be touching the top two teeth, the upper tooth in your mouth. And when the tongue is touching, you should pronounce the letter and then blow out and say Tha. And it's almost like the English, TH in thanks, So it's like almost like you're spreading your mouth a little bit, but the tongue is touching the top two teeth, and then you pronounce this letter Tha. So almost like you're smiling. And it's very similar to the word thanks. So the correct pronunciation over here would be batha. So the next letter is the letter Ha. Now, this Ha is a letter of the throat, and they say that this letter should come from the middle part of your throat. So if you look at your throat and you try and divide it into like 3 sections, try and pronounce this Ha from the middle of your throat. And it's often mispronounced and confused with the other Ha, which is a lighter Ha. Yeah? So if over here I have this one word, ahsan, yeah? Ahsan. And it's very, very common that someone can, mispronounce this and say ahsan. Now the other Ha, which is the circular Ha, this Ha actually comes from the bottom of your throat, so not the middle. So if you place your fingers on the bottom part of your throat over here and you pronounce Ha as a very light, Ha, you will feel this vibration in your throat over here. So this is the differentiation between these two letters. So the first one is the Ha from the middle part of your throat, and the correct pronunciation is ahsanu. So one example from the Holy Qur'an where you find both of these letters within one verse. So وَنَحْنُ لَهُ عَابِدُونَ. So over here we have وَنَحْنُ, which is the Ha from the throat, the middle part of your throat, and then we have lahu, which is a lighter version of this. So these two letters, they are often mispronounced, so it's very, very important that we pronounce these letters in the correct manner. So the next letter is the Dhal, the Dhal. And we have one word over here, كَذَّبُوا. So the correct pronunciation is كَذَّبُوا. The tip of the tongue slightly comes out of the mouth, just like the Tha, but there is more vibration in this pronunciation. So whereas in the Tha, when the tongue was touching the tip of the tooth, the mouth was producing this sound, and the vocal cords were not being used as much, so there wasn't as much vibration. But in this case, the Dhal, it's a similar method, similar way to pronounce this letter, but the vocal cords are being used and there's more vibration to this. And the tongue is pressed against the edge of the upper front teeth. So same way like the Tha, but we are using the vocal cords over here. So كَذَّبُوا. And often this is, mispronounced with za, the letter za. So it's not kazza, it's كَذَّبُوا. This is the correct pronunciation. And we have one verse from the Holy Qur'an over here. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وَالَّذِينَ كَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِنَا. So as you can see over here, كَذَّبُوا the letter has been used over here, and this is the best example. So the next letter is the Sad, Sad. And this is often mispronounced and confused with the Sin. So as you can see on the screen, we have this word, as-salihat. So this would be the correct pronunciation, and this letter has the same articulation point as the letter Sin, which is why there could be some sort of confusion when you're pronouncing this letter. But the top of the tongue is raised to the roof of the mouth to make it a heavy and thick sounding letter. So in this case, if we take the Sin is a very light letter, Sin, Sa, Sa. It's a very light letter. But in this case, with the Sad, it has to be a bit of a thick letter, circulated, and your tongue should be raised to the roof of the mouth and try to make this sound a little bit heavy. So, Sa, As-salihat, As-salihat. So this is the correct pronunciation. So we have one verse from the Holy Qur'an. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم والذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات. So this is the correct pronunciation for this letter. So the next letter is Daad, and this letter is a thick letter, and this is one of the hardest letters to pronounce in the Arabic language, and I think a lot of people struggle with this, but practice makes perfect. This letter is a heavy, thick sounding consonant. So the correct way to pronounce this letter is that the entire side of the tongue touches the base of the molar teeth, either the right side or the left side or both sides. And one thing that you should be very careful is not to confuse this with the Dal. This is a thicker letter, the thicker sounding letter, and not to confuse it with the Va. So this is very, very important. And one example, beautiful example from the Holy Qur'an, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وَالضُّحَى. So that's another beautiful example from the Holy Qur'an. So remember not to confuse this with the Dha and not to confuse this with the Dal. So Humayun, the next letter is the letter Ta, and this is often confused and mispronounced with the letter Ta, the simple Ta. The biggest difference between these two letters is that the Ta is a thicker letter in comparison to the letter Ta. And it's very, very important not to get these two letters confused and, not to mispronounce them. So the best way to pronounce this is that your tongue should be touching the bottom part of your top teeth, and you just blow out and you pronounce it and you just say Ta. So it's as simple as that. It's just thicker than the Ta. And one example from the Holy Qur'an is from Surah Tariq, and the verse is أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والسماء والطارق وما أدراك ما الطارق. So as you can see with this example in the Holy Qur'an, a perfect example to showcase the correct pronunciation of the letter Ta. So Humayun, the next letter, the letter Dha, it's not like the letter Dhal, before when we mentioned the Dhal, and it's not like the letter Za. So it's very, very important to pronounce this, and the correct way to pronounce this is that your tongue, you circulate your mouth a little bit and you raise your tongue. The sound is the way the sound comes out is the same way, but in this case, the tongue should be touching the top part of your back, to the back of your mouth. So we have an example over here on screen. Al-Zahiru. Yeah? So as you can see, it's very different to the letter Dhal and the letter Zha. And we have one example from the Holy Qur'an. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم فأولئك هم الظالمون. So over here, this is a very, very good example of how this letter has been pronounced. Hamayu, the next letter is the letter Ain, one of the most predominant letters, very, very clear, very, very easy to understand and pronounce as well. One thing to bear in mind when we're pronouncing this Ain, it's one of the throat letters and it should come from the middle part of your throat. Not to confuse this letter with the Hamza and the Alif. If we look at this example over here, Asmi'. So as you can see, the Ain, I've produced this sound from the throat, but I didn't say Asmi', because if I do that, then that automatically turns into an Hamza. And if we look at one example from the Holy Qur'an, chapter 20, verse 47, in the end we have over here, Asma'u wa ara. So we have the Alif over here as well, and we have the Ain over here as well, so we can see the differentiation between these two letters. So Hamayu, the next letter is the letter Qaf, and this is a thick letter, and this letter is a letter that can often be mispronounced and confused with the other kaf. And we know that there's a lighter kaf, and that kaf is just a simple kaf. And we have two examples over here, shaqqa and then shakka. So as you can see, one is light, one is thick, and one word over here is inshaqqa. So the letter Qaf is actually pronounced from the farthest part of your mouth. So right at the back of your mouth, just before the throat. So this letter, the sound of this letter comes from that area within your mouth. So it's like really, really deep into your mouth. The sound actually comes just before your throat. And it's a thick letter. And the other kaf, the kaf that we discussed, which is a lighter kaf, it's almost like a K in English. But this particular qaf is very thick. So we have to be very, very careful in when we pronounce this letter. So I have one verse from the Holy Qur'an. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم اقتربت الساعة وانشق القمر. So as you can see over here, we have multiple examples of the letter Qaf, and one thing to remember is that it's a thick letter. So Hamayu, the next example, we touched upon Ain earlier on, so the next letter is the Hamza and the Alif. And this letter is also a letter of the throat, but it comes from the different part of the throat. So this, normally they say it comes from the bottom part of your throat. So when you do pronounce this letter, and if you place your fingers at the bottom part, you will feel some sort of vibration. So it comes from the bottom part of the throat. And we have one example over here, yu'marun. Yeah, yu'marun. So sometimes what people tend to do is they tend to, mispronounce this, and they will pronounce the letter Ain and they will say yu'marun, which is wrong. It will change the whole meaning of the word. So over here it will be yu'marun. And I have one example from chapter 16, verse 51, where both the Ain and the Hamza are used. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وَيَفْعَلُونَ مَا يُؤْمَرُونَ. So as you can see, the يَفْعَلُونَ has the Ain and the يُؤْمَرُونَ has the Hamza. So there's a clear differentiation between these two letters.
Jazakallah Talat. I think you cleared up really well. I think for anyone who does mix up these sounds, I think it's really important to identify each individual letter as it is, and then go and try and practice when you are reciting the Holy Quran. And that's a good practice to do when you are in the mode of training and learning about the pronunciation of the letters. Jazakallah.